To the Woman Witness podcast on the Woman Witness TV network. I'm your host, Leah Fortier. I want to thank you so much for tuning in to our 12 episodes of December with 12 inspiring women with 12 inspiring stories. We cannot wait to gift you a gift that continues to keep giving throughout the month of December. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Woman Witness Podcast, The Stories at the Well. I'm your host, Leah Fortier. Here on this platform, we bring to you voices of women that are out there making a positive impact in their lives, in their families, in their community as a whole. Today, I have a very special guest for you, and I'd like to read a little bit about her before I introduce our guest to you. Today, I bring to you Miss Ashley O'Neal. She is a writer and a speaker who uses her words for healing and drawing from her own journey as a NICU and preemie mother, a widow and a loss of a mom, and her eldest son who passed away shortly after birth. Through her path to healing, she found her purpose to provide hope and support and resources for NICU families. With over a decade of nursing experience and 5 years as a family nurse practitioner, Ashley is preparing to launch her first book, It's a NICU World. She openly discusses her trials and victories of being a NICU mother on her podcast, Ask a NICU Mama. Her primary goal is to show that even in the darkest times, there is always a glimmer of hope, and sometimes it takes just a little searching to find it. Without further ado, I'm so excited to introduce to you my special guest, Miss Ashley O'Neal. Hey, Ashley, welcome to the Well.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. Ashley, I am blown away by who you are and what you have been able to accomplish. When I received your file, one of the things that really stood out to me, and I highlighted it here, was you said that out of everything that you have been through, you literally should be crazy right now, but God. And I'm glad that you are resilient and that you are going out there and that you are spreading word and educating other mothers who are maybe perhaps in the same situation or fighting their way through it, or on the other side of it and trying to figure out how to move forward. So I'm so excited that you are here to talk to us today. So let me just start by asking you to take us back to the time where you really experienced that loss, and tell us a little bit about that journey.
My husband and I, he was a person that literally pulled himself up by the bootstraps. Like he had to find the material to even make the boot to be able to pull himself up. We always said that we just wanted a family of our own. We can create like a new families that we could have our kids do whatever they wanted to be. He had a master's, I had a master's, and we used to joke like our boys or the kids that we would later have had no choice but to be doctors and lawyers, some type of terminal degree, right? The plans we make. And so when we got pregnant, 2 years after we got married with our first son, I just remember we found out like New Year's Day. And we just sat there in the bed and just like made plans for our future. And everything was going well. So at the time I was a floor nurse, and it was a night shift floor nurse. And it was like a crazy week. It was very hard. And I was in grad school to become a nurse practitioner at the time. And I got up, went to go take a shower, and noticed I was bleeding. And literally less than 12 hours later, I had gotten, transferred to another hospital. At that time, at 21 weeks gestation, they tell you there's nothing they can do for your baby if the baby was to be born. And so I'm sitting there trying to like not move, because I was like, this baby was wanted. And then all of a sudden, at 6 a.m., I had my son. He was born alive at 21 weeks gestation, died shortly after. And so that was the first time I felt what like true grief was.
Yeah.
Like when you're younger, you bury your grandparents. They're older. You kind of expect it, even though it still hurts.
Yeah.
But to bury your own baby, it just takes you to like a new place.
Yeah. Yeah. I am so sorry to hear that.
It took my husband and I a while to get to the point where we wanted to try again. But it shattered him and kind of just change your perspective on life, because we did what we felt was right, the right way, right?
Right.
We got married, had an education, then came the baby.
Yeah.
And then the baby is gone. And so once we got to the point where we wanted to try it again, here comes my second son at 25 weeks gestation.
25 weeks.
25 weeks. Luckily, it was the point where they're at 21 weeks, you're viable, what you could call it, viable. And so he got flown to a bigger hospital roughly 4 hours after he was born. I had him via emergency C-section, and I got transferred the following day. And from there, he was in the NICU for 6 months, so 183 days.
Oh my gosh.
And watched him literally fight for his life. I had a conversation with Colin, my son's Colin, because there was times we didn't think he was going to make it. And I told him I would fight for him as long as he wanted to fight. But if he wanted to go, he can go.
Oh.
And I looked in there. He's just moving in the incubator. He activated himself several times.
So you're like, so we're fighting.
And that's grief. Yes, he lived, but that's the grief of never having a normal pregnancy, I've never had maternity photos taken. I've never had a baby shower. Like, I've never got to do all the cute things like on your journey to become a mother.
Yeah.
And then when 7 months after he was discharged from the NICU, I went to work one day. I kissed my husband goodbye, and he was alive. And I came home 12 hours later, and he was deceased in our bedroom. Just dropped. So that's literally 4 years of grief. Like, my eldest son was born and died beginning of May 2016, and my husband died end of May 2020. So 4 years. Then you throw in COVID.
And this was in 2020, you said?
When he passed.
2020. And everything then shut down. Ashley, I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine. I honestly, I can definitely hear when you say a lot of different things, and when you talk about the journey of in just being resilient and things that you've been through that, not one person can even imagine, and having to grieve it all in such a short period of time. I want to ask you if you can tell us about how you began to persevere or work through that grief.
I never really feel like I had the opportunity to grieve until recently. And so, mind you, my last month made 4 years since my husband's been deceased, and then 8 years since my son's been deceased. It wasn't until last year that I had the opportunity to really grieve and process everything, because it was just like trauma after trauma after trauma, throw in school, family nurse practitioner, a busy primary care office. And I found myself doing so much work at home and on the weekends. So a little over a year ago, I walked away from my job.
Really?
I couldn't do it anymore. And it was a job that I once prayed for. And it took a while for me to even come to terms. Because you get those nuggets. You're like, usually this season of this place is no longer for you. Yeah. But you're like, I fought for it. I worked hard.
Right.
And the joy of building those patient, because where I'm from, nurse practitioners can have their own panel of patients. So these were my patients. These were my babies. I took care of, cradle to the grave. And there was a couple of families where I took care of 3 or 4 different generations of family. So to walk away from that, I felt like I was deserting them. Right. And I felt like I was deserting my coworkers, because everybody was stressed. Everybody was struggling.
Yeah.
And I had to come to the point where I was because I went back to work when my son was still in the NICU, 2 months into a 6-month NICU stay.
Oh my goodness.
And I worked through, when he came home, I took a month and a half off. And then when my husband passed, I took 3 months off. But when he passed, it was COVID. You couldn't go anywhere. You're just sitting in your house looking at the walls with a sick baby at home. So I
Right.
can't even help that. But I was like, you've been working your kid's whole life. When are you going to take care of yourself? And then when you take care of yourself, you'll have more energy to like care for him.
Yeah.
And so we spent the last year traveling. I took him on his first international trip. I took him to Vegas with me to see Usher.
I love it.
Like we just little trips here and there to visit family. I just needed that time to like
Yeah.
write and process and figure out what's next.
Yeah. You know, Ashley, I love how you said that you took that time to begin to just process what just happened because you had a lot that just happened. And you, from what I hear, you said you kind of worked through it. Can you talk to some of those women and men, maybe perhaps, who are in that stage of just working through it? Did you tell us how you felt? Was it kind of like you were a zombie, or were you having almost like an outer body experience? Talk to us about that process, if you.
I felt like the whole world was in gray.
Mm,
And I would
yeah,
I have an image like I'm sitting there in my living room. My husband had just died. It's COVID. And I'm just rocking him, trying not to cry in
yeah,
front of him. And my son has special needs. And everybody always says like how lucky he is to have me, but he saved me. Like he gave me purpose to keep going. Even when I was like, I want to stay in my bed, like he needs his meds, he needs his appointments. And then his smile just
lights
lights up
up.
like the whole world. And he is like, so he's like my husband in like a baby form, just opinionated and feisty, and like he's nonverbal, but he communicates very well. He
Yeah,
lets you know what he doesn't like and what he does want. Every day you keep going, you keep pushing along. Like if you can only think of the next 5 minutes, just do what you can the next 5 minutes.
yeah,
And realize that what you don't get, and I still, like when I wake up in the morning every day, my mind is like racing and spinning like all the things I need to do. But I say, hey, Ashley,
what are we gonna.
everything that you have ever needed to do, you've always gotten done. Like, why are you stressed?
Yeah,
Like, what are you worried about? And I have to have like these mental conversations like every morning when I wake up. Like, slow
yeah,
down, Ashley. Had a therapist for a while just to kind of like work through my thoughts.
yeah,
And writing is healing for me, and sharing my story is healing for me. And
yeah,
because I feel like it has to be a purpose for me to have gone through everything that I have in like 4 years. Because I've met people who are widows, I've met people who have lost a child, I met people who had what's called like a micro preemie, when my son was born at 25 weeks. But I've only seen like either one other story on Instagram where it was like all three.
I don't think I have. Which gives you that load, and to have that such a complex journey, if you will, other than you're seeing a therapist, right? And you begin to write and having your beautiful baby, right? And knowing that he needs you. What other resources did you pull from to work through this healing process?
When my son first passed, I joined an organization called Footprints for Faith, and it's like a lost parent support group. And so a Cuddle Cot is a device where when a baby passes, it's kind of like, it looks like a bassinet, but it's like a cooling device. So it allows families to be able to spend more time with their babies. And a lot of lost moms, they always say they wish they just would have had more time at the end when the baby passed. And so we fundraised to donate one of those to like the local community hospitals that we have, because we live in a rural area. And over the years, we've heard of families who had to use it. Of course, we don't want anyone to have to, but the fact that it was there is kind of healing, because you gave somebody something that, we ourselves didn't have. And I've communicate a lot with other NICU moms, and we just like share our experience, what we've gone through. Um, you just have someone that truly like understands you, where you don't have to overly explain. You can just say like a simple line and they get it.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm pretty sure your advice to anyone who may be in this situation or maybe listening to us right now, would be to get out, and maybe you don't even have to get out nowadays. You have a podcast. So even finding, logging into a great podcast or hearing someone else's story, how much would you recommend that they do that in at their earliest convenience?
I definitely think it's crucial as soon as possible. Because I've had people I consider like good friends who I've never met. I've met them on Instagram.
Yeah.
And we call each other, we text like, hey, how are you? I just saw this post where your kid's sick or in the hospital. Like, do you need anything? People are sending each other like coffee gift cards and just like a sense of community, even when you don't. Because there's sometimes like we don't even have the ability to leave our house depending on what's going on with our kid.
Right. Right. And you said your son is 4 years old, right?
5 now.
He's 5. Oh, I love it so much. Okay, I want to ask you, finding that hope, and through all of this, you have managed to find a way to heal and move forward. And can you tell us about that turning point? You said that you realized, what, I was working too much and I need to get away and I need to start living in my reality and living life and living seeing things and traveling, going places with my son. Can you tell us about that turning point and when you begin to see that hope and that path to healing begin to open up?
I will have to say when I finally made up the decision to leave my job. The final straw is I woke up New Year's Eve day 2020 and whole body was hurting from stress, neck hurting, back hurting. And I had to chart. I had a bunch of open charts I needed to finish. And I looked down and my son was playing on the floor by himself. And I was like, I don't have to live like this. And so my first day back after New Year, I submitted my letter of resignation. And even though like my profession, you have to give like a 3-month notice. And so even though I had to give that 3-month notice, once the letter was like in my medical director's hands, it just like a weight lifted. It was like,
Yeah.
and then I could start planning and kind of like pursuing the things that I have a passion for.
Yeah.
And just rest.
And just rest. Ashley, like I want to ask you, do you miss it?
I do. And I see patients like out in the community and they're like, when are you coming back? Are you going to practice? Like, we missed you. And then, so I do miss it. And now I'm just trying to eventually I will go back, but probably just like super part-time.
Yeah.
But I do miss it. It was a very hard decision.
Or even, and just my thoughts, maybe God's working on something else for you, maybe something that you can be more mobilized, or maybe, an educational realm of it, maybe not just in the office doing what you were doing before, but, doing it in a different way, maybe going out visiting some of the, NICU moms and maybe bringing your son along with them. And, just so many different things I can see for you, a path forward, especially with something that you really love. Okay, so I have to ask you, how has your faith and your personal testimony played a role in your journey to healing and resilience?
After my eldest son passed, it took a while. I felt I couldn't even pray. I couldn't even pray while I was eating.
Talk to us.
And I'm just like, I did everything you wanted me to do, and my baby still died.
Yeah.
And it took a while. Like, even though I felt like the nudging, it took a while for me to get back to a place like, okay, Ashley, God's still there. You're blocking him out. He's there, but you're not open. And it took me a while to just get to like a good place. And then I stayed on my knees when Colin was in the hospital. Like, I called everybody. Like I organized like 24. Like there was a time when so he has my son has like brain bleeds, which cause like significant like brain loss and tissue loss. And he has like hydrocephalus, which is a buildup of like fluid on the brain, and he needed a shunt. So he has a device that kind of drains the fluid from like his brain to his belly. And there was a time when we didn't know exactly if he was either going to survive or what, like when you look at a picture of the brain, like the folds on the brain is an indication of like cognition and intelligence and things like that. And there was a part where his wasn't growing. And we didn't know if it was just because his brain had so much trauma at birth that it just needed more time to heal or it would never grow. And at the time I was like, no, I don't know. And so I got organized like a 24-hour like prayer. That's my late husband was Catholic. I'm Baptist. We had the nuns and the Baptists praying. Like we had
everybody, let's go to work.
Fine. And and then when my husband died, honestly, like when my son had like a home health nurse, like while I was at work. And when I came home, she called, she was like, hey, Ashley, I haven't heard from Jorge because he was working from home. It was COVID and it was his day off. I haven't heard from him from a while. Her son was actually there. My husband had tutored him earlier that day. And so she's like, I just want to leave early. Can you call him? He doesn't answer. I'm like, okay, he's asleep. So I come strolling in the house. I go upstairs and the way my doors are, when you open it, you immediately see the bed. And so I open the door. I don't see him in the bed and I just like stroll my eyes and he's like laying on the floor and I instantly knew he was dead.
You just knew.
And I wasn't even at first. My first thought was like, of course,
really?
Dead son, sick baby. Of course, like why wouldn't my husband die? That was my initial thought. Like I just looked. I was like, okay, this is what we're doing.
What else?
Whatever. And so that moment, I was done for a while. And even through like the midst of that, like I had complete strangers show up at my door with food, like neighbors I had never met, and we had been here for like 4 years. I've had everything that I have ever needed, Colin has never ever needed, showed up at our doorsteps. And it's like I was able to walk away from my job without a worry of paying my bills. Like my kid has special needs, and I have every piece of equipment he needs in my back room in the basement. Like,
and you know how to work.
And so it's like throughout the midst of everything, God was just showing me that he was there.
Ooh, Ashley, you said quite a few different things, and I just want to highlight some of them. You said when you walked in and you initially said, okay, why not? Right. And I think for a lot of us who are, in our faith or even starting our journey in faith, sometimes we question God, and I think it's okay, right? It's okay to say, God, why? Why this? Why is this happening to me? And one of the things that I do realize is that it's okay to ask, and if we ask, He will reveal it. He always reveals his purpose and why we had to go through that pain. And it's okay, Ashley, if I was to just give like a couple of 2 cents, it's okay to ask God why. And anyone who's listening, it's okay to ask why when you have these events, this trauma, because God will reveal to you and you will come out on top. You will come out victorious because you are going to turn your pain, as you said, Ashley, into purpose. Ashley, I want you to advise us. What advice would you give to any mothers or any individuals going through similar losses right now? What would you say to them in the depths to reach them and snatch them out of their grief that they're in right now?
I would say that although everything seems so dark and heavy and suffocating right now, it won't always feel that way. And I'm not saying that life would magically be perfect. But you will learn to rise to the occasion and you will become strong enough to meet whatever obstacle you come across.
I like that. I like it so much. Ashley, I say this all the time. I going through my own trauma as, a child, right? And it's not about me. I used to always say, God, what do you want me to do with this? Why do I still feel this? I carried around so much anger and so much pain, so much grief, that I felt like I was grieving almost every day. And then I wondered why, when I began to tell my story and when I began to be a witness, why so many people were able to relate to me. And I realized it was because I've actually went through it. And because I've actually been through it, and it's still a process. It's still something that I have to continue to talk about, continue to write about, continue to, go out there and my best to make a difference. And as you said, even before, it helped me to forgive and to let go of some of that grief and move forward. And so I love everything that you said, and I love what you're saying to even the people who are listening who have experienced similar losses, is that yes, it's not going to happen instantly, and yes, it still happened, it's still there, but God, as you said before, but God will shine a light on that and bring some purpose to your pain. Finally, I want you to talk to us about your book. And I want you to talk to us about where we can find this book and what we can find in the book.
I think I just want to add one thing that has helped me. Within the last year, every day I get up, and one of the first things I do is write down at least 5 things that I'm grateful for. And that has just helped me to refocus and think about the positives that I have going on and not necessarily the negatives, because you kind of tend to, wherever you focus on, that's kind of like how you're going to feel for the day. And that's going to set your kind of like the tone of your day. So that has helped that. And then just having like my daily quiet times with like whatever gospel music that I want to listen to that morning, and whatever for the last year, I've just probably been doing like more of like a topical Bible study. And so I get up and Google like scriptures for however I'm feeling. If I feel like I need to be more grateful, I'll Google that. Or if I need more scriptures on like direction, and I just write them down and kind of meditate on those. And that has how, since I've started doing that, like mostly consistently, I feel like I've just been in a better space.
I like that, Ashley. I like that. I can definitely, Ashley, maybe perhaps you have to keep some of those journals so you can put together like a journal devotional for other women who may be experiencing that. Make it like a blank guide so more people can use it and heal from it, kind of like yours. Tell us about your book.
So it's a NICU World, and it's a children's book, and it's based off of Colin's NICU experience. And I first got the idea when he came home. I was like, I'm going to write a book. And like I took like a piece of computer paper, like folded up like a book, and I pretty much wrote it in like one day. And then the next day I went back, reread it and changed it. And I was like, okay, when life gets easier, I'm going to bring this back out. So I put it away. And then after my husband died, I was like, oh, life is not going to get any easier.
I got to do this.
So I was like, it was just like gnawing at me. And I was like, and I picked it up for a couple of days, and I was like, I can't. Like, I didn't have the energy to like do anything. And I was like, I can't. And so I want to say probably a little over a year ago, it was just calling my name. And so I started writing again. And I got it edited. And then there's been like several delays, but I feel like sometimes it's like things happen in God's timing versus ours, because had it come out last year when it should have come out, I wouldn't have had the ability or the capacity to do anything with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then since then I've like started like the podcast, and I've gotten like more of like an audience and more understanding of the process. So I was told so it really should be done at the end of the week. And I just have to order copies. So at the end of the week, I will start probably doing taking pre-orders within the next few weeks.
I love it, Ashley. I love it. It's just a start of so many for you. And so tell us a little bit about your podcast. Where can we find it? Where can we start listening to you? And what can we expect when we tune in?
So it's called the Ask a NICU Mama podcast. And I launched it this past January, which is a total act of faith, because like the year before, it was like in my spirit, start a podcast. And I was like, who's going to listen? What am I going to talk about? What am I going to do with this? Right. And so when I first announced it, originally I was just planning on like doing it by myself. And then when I first announced it, and I was just like, coming soon, like my inbox got flooded. Like, oh, I'll be on your podcast. I'll be on your podcast. And I was like, oh, I guess we're taking guests.
That's what we're doing today. Yeah. Okay. Got it.
Okay. And so I did like the first 7 episodes by myself. I ended up interviewing like 19 people.
Wow.
And by the time the season ends, I'll have like 27 episodes. And I was like,
So
but
this is what we're doing.
This is what we're doing. This is what we're doing. But there's, even as a healthcare provider, you only see the healthcare system from one angle. Like I knew it was bad, but I didn't realize how bad it was until I became a mom of like a special needs son. And I had to learn so much stuff on my own, stuff that the NICU probably should have told me, but even they didn't know.
Yeah.
And so like now they'll call me like, hey, Ashley, I got this patient with a baby. She had a baby that's similar to Colin. Can you talk to them? Can you walk them through the, and even the doctors who really didn't have that much hope for Colin, they're calling like, hey, I got this mom. Can you talk to them? Can you share your story? And I used to have like a index card on Colin's incubator, like, hey, do you know that you're looking at a miracle? And whenever I take him back to the NICU, one of the doctors like, you said he was a miracle. You said it. Because they told me he wasn't going to be able to walk, talk, eat, see, like all of this stuff. Like they didn't even think he'd be able to like manage his own secretions. Mm-hmm. And so he's 5 now. He knows his shapes, his colors. He can spell. I'm sure the boy can read. He can count. Yeah. He can work an iPhone better than I ever can. And it's like I created the podcast to reach the mom who was me, essentially. Yeah. You're getting ready to take this, even when you're in the NICU or when you're getting ready to take this sick baby home and you're wondering if you're going to make it. Do you have what it takes? It's like they tell you that the NICU is going to be a roller coaster when you get in. You're going to have highs and lows, but there were months where I felt like I was just falling. And there was like nothing to grab me. And every time I come in there, they're telling me bad news. Like the first time I went home to get clean clothes, I didn't even make it into my driveway before the hospital was calling. Like, oh, your son's bleeds are worse. Oh. And I'm just like, I can't even get clean clothes. I can't get clean. We're not doing that. No. And, and I went back to work when he was 2 months old, still in NICU. So I'm at work taking care of healthy babies. And my kid's having brain surgery. Like the next day. And to like compartmentalize that, the mom is telling me like, hey, my baby has constipation. In your mind, you're like, I'll take that. Yeah. And so I want to be able to speak to the families who had the hard, complicated cases to let you know that your normal may be different, but it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that so much, Ashley. Ashley, you have your ministry. You have your next journey, your next career already lined up. And God's just putting everything in place for you. Oh my gosh, I can see it. I really can. Man, Ashley, you have really worked my heartstrings, and I want to give you the biggest hug possible. Your resilience is just, I can't even explain it at all. You are out here being a witness. You said 27 episodes already in your first season that you just started your podcast in January. There are people who need you, who need your story. Man, I could just see it growing and you teaching other women and other nurses how to really care for the families who need it the most, who may be forgotten or pushed aside. I see so much and I hear so much, Ashley, and I thank you for coming and bringing your story here to this well. I promise you there are women who will hear this and be healed and be restored and be given hope. So I thank you so much, and I'm trying to fight back tears right now because what am I crying for? Okay. Ashley, leave us with something. I need you to give us some hope to take with us throughout this week.
The best piece of advice I can do too, especially for the NICU parents or the kids with complex medical needs. And this is a piece of advice that was given to me when Colin was in the NICU. Our only job as parents is to love our children and give them all the resources that they need, that we can possibly give them, and they will show us who they're capable of. We are not responsible for how high the ceiling they reach, as long as we give them the tools and the love that they need. And that kind of just releases you from all of that extra expectation, all that extra like guilt when you can't do something right. And that has, on the hard days, I think about that, and I was like, I gave it all I had today, and that has to be enough. And then for anyone who's just in like a dark place, know that you're not the only one. There's so many people that are walking around that are just feel so heavy, and they wonder how they're going to make it. And they're just, I don't know, maybe broken. The best piece of advice I can give you is to just focus on the here and now. We get so lost and trapped trying to worry about 5 years from now. We don't have the capacity, right? If you're in that broken state, all you can think about is getting through today. So do what you can today to set yourself up for a better tomorrow. And then when tomorrow comes, each day has enough worries for itself, enough problems for itself. Worry about that once you get to tomorrow. Your whole goal is to just make it through this day when you're to the point where you can barely even breathe. And then eventually you'll look up and you've taken each day, if you consider each day a step, you're across the room. And then when you look up, you'll probably see the sun shining and you'll feel warm and more beautiful because you worked like, I don't know what to get there.
Oh my gosh, Ashley, that is beautiful. That is so beautiful. I couldn't even agree more. And I will say, can I just add to that a little bit? Because we don't know what people go through, sometimes we look at the outer appearance and we feel that, oh, they got it all together. Oh, they just have an attitude today. Just giving that compassion and that kindness to someone, that grace, because you don't know what they're battling. That goes a long way. And I think we can all take some ownership and say, you know what, I'm going to take a deep breath. When I go to this grocery store and somebody jump in front of me, I'm going to go ahead and let them have it. You don't know what they're going through.
Agree with that, because a lot of times once people hear my story, they'll look at me and was like, I can't imagine you going through all that.
Yeah. What does it look like, Ashley?
Me?
Yeah.
Look like.
You're right. But I think you're right. I think sometimes so often we imagine that people are going to walk around and, with something written on their face, like, here's my story. So, okay, Ashley, I want to give you the biggest hug ever. And when I meet you one day, which I will, I'm going to do that, girl. And I got your back. Anything you want to do, let's do it. I love to partner with you and do it with you. Okay. I want to thank everyone for tuning in to another episode of Woman Witness Podcast of Stories at the Well. Thank you, Ashley O'Neill, for coming and sharing your story, your resiliency. I want to ask everyone to please follow Ashley, check out her podcast. If you would like to reach out to her, support her on any projects or missions that she is doing, please reach out to her. I will leave all the information in the description below. Follow her as well on social media. Like and share this podcast with anyone who you think that can really benefit from it. Joining us on another episode of the Woman Witness Podcast on Woman Witness TV Network. Perhaps you were chosen for such a time as this to write, to tell your story, your truth. Until next time.